You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Today on our second house call of the weekend, we're going to be answering the rest of our community's questions. So hopefully you tuned in yesterday. I answered a bunch of questions on everything from tongue diagnosis. Again, we did a little follow-up on that. I talked about how to lose weight effectively from cardio as well as weight training. So we went over that. And then also a big one on thyroid issues. So if you didn't tune into that, certainly do recommend it. All right, so let's get into today's first question. Today's first question is just titled Psoriasis Suffer. And they wrote in this. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I truly appreciate all you do, and your work has inspired me not to give up. The problem is that I've dealt with psoriasis since I was a child, and nothing seems to work. It often gets better for a short time and then relapses. It makes relationships and my social life very difficult. I really need your help and advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So Psoriasis Suffer, we do have an answer for you. And I'm pretty sure that we have gotten back to you potentially through email. Again, the best place to reach us is always stephencabral.com/ask Cabral. I get literally hundreds of emails per day. We're simply not able to respond to all of those. It's just they're literally, when you look at the minutes in the day, there's not enough time to do that from different questions. But that's why I'll always answer all of your questions right here on the house call. So just ask them right there. So this is what I want to share with you, and that I've worked with at least 100 people with psoriasis and eczema, and everywhere from infants to children to adults. Here's the thing. Psoriasis is a complex autoimmune or immune-based dysfunction. So when Psoriasis Suffer wrote in and said, I've had it since I was a child, I know that it goes beyond the scope of, let's just give, a 1-minute talk about this. However, I'm going to give you everything that you need to do to seek out a good naturopathic or functional medicine doctor, or work with one of our team members as well. So here we go. When someone deals with psoriasis and they're dealing with it from a childhood-based issues, they're dealing with some type of gut permeability-based issue. And I can say that now because I've literally dealt with this and been successful hundreds of times. So what we're looking at is when the gut wall, so your intestines are about 28, 29 feet long, when there's additional permeability, that means the spaces that are typically in the gaps of the intestines become larger, protein-based particles from those foods can actually escape through. So that means that instead of your body just seeing things like leucine, isoleucine, valine, glycine, all these different amino acids from proteins, it actually is seeing amino acid strands, more like what chicken would look like, or some type of meat that you put in your body. Well, when that comes through into your bloodstream, where 80% of your immune system is lying right in the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, the GALT, that means that your immune system is actually going to create an immune response to that. That in turn is going to create inflammation, and your body will then go through basically an immune cascade process of attacking this foreign body that has just entered from the outside of your body, which is your intestinal tract, that's to keep it away from your blood, into your bloodstream now. So your liver has to detox it. And psoriasis is just simply a very good way for your body to push it through the skin when the liver becomes overwhelmed or when there's an inflammatory based process. It's very well documented. It's just not treated in conventional medicine. It's actually a larger Th1 immune-based imbalance. That means there's a intracellular-based imbalance or immune response. It's exaggerated. It's an autoimmune-based process. However, you can take biologic-based drugs that are going to suppress your immune system, but then you end up dying of things like pneumonia. It's horrible. I can't believe that that's how we're practicing medicine now, but I understand that we're trying to relieve the symptoms and the suffering of a lot of people, like this person who wrote in. They're saying they're having difficulty in relationships. I've worked with people just like you. I understand what it's like. I've seen it in my practice where people have psoriasis all over their thighs and their back and their chest and their face. It's brutal. And so here's what we can do to help. And we we really can help you. And we'll do a longer show about this as well. But the first thing you have to do is you have to remove the offending substances in the gut. So there's two main things, stress and gut-based dysfunction. So first, we have to remove the candida, the bacterial overgrowth, and then put back in the good stuff, meaning like the probiotics afterwards, not before. I've seen psoriasis actually get worse if you start taking probiotics. And the reason is you can already have too much bacterial overgrowth in your gut. And what happens is then those bacteria actually move through the gut wall as well. Not ideal. So here's what we do. We do a candida or bacterial overgrowth removal process. We have a whole supplement-based protocol, food-based protocol on how to do that. You can find it at my store. However, if you would like to do the actual testing first, my highest recommendation is to actually do the organic acids test. Look for that candida overgrowth. Look for that bacterial overgrowth, especially bacteria like Clostridium difficile. Really important to find and eliminate. It will actually show you your whole gut function in general. Look at your vitamins. The other thing you may want to run is a hair tissue mineral analysis, since a lot of people with heavy metals, such as mercury and, believe it or not, copper, actually have psoriasis issues as well. So if you have heavy metal toxicity, well, you're going to want to remove those heavy metals as well. So you could run another profile, which is your adrenal and hormones. The issue is you're most likely dealing from high levels of stress. So you might want to save your money in that regard. It's totally up to you. It's a great lab to run. You can look for estrogen dominance versus low progesterone. However, again, all of that's going to be cleared up as you start to work on detoxifying the body and also reducing stress. I've actually seen people do everything right when it comes to psoriasis and still not totally remove it and get flare-ups, just like Psoriasis Suffer is mentioning, because of massive stress in their life. You know, what comes down to it is this, is that stress creates gut-based issues, stress creates inflammatory-based issues, stress creates immune-based imbalances. You have to, besides the gut rebuilding, you have to get control of your overall stress. I know, easier said than done. I totally understand it. I was there myself. Please do keep listening to the Motivation Mindset Mondays of how to start to rewire your thinking. I'm telling you, but if you don't begin to lower those stress levels, it's going to be truly challenging to completely eliminate it. So I just want to give you the truth. It's from a biological, physiological perspective and gut-based issues. Of course, you can do food sensitivity testing as well. I highly recommend that. The other thing is it's psychological as well. It's not psychosomatic. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that your actual stress can create these triggers in your body. I've seen people just go into remission, get super stressed, flare back up. Super stressed, flare back up. A lot like alopecia. So hopefully that answers your question. And I think that's a really great place to start. So either run the labs or go right into the Candida bacterial-based protocol. Once you finish that, do your leaky gut repair. You're going to be good to go. I mean, you really will. Take control of your stress, do the protocols, and again, you're going to be feeling good. I've just seen it too many times to say that it's not going to work for you either. All right, so Lorraine is up next. So Lorraine is asking, so we go from a intense question to a more, I think, lighthearted question. And should I take a B-complex vitamin? If so, which one? Am I doing too much B-complex if I'm also doing your all-in-one too? Okay, so good question. Really simply, you can... B-complex, like a B vitamin, is one of those things that's it has to be individualized, right? So I use B-complex a lot in my practice because what is a B vitamin known for? Well, it's actually known as the anti-stress vitamin. So kind of playing back into the psoriasis sufferer's question is we have to be able to buffer stress in our body. There's a bunch of things that do that. There's glutamine, there's zinc, but there's also all of your B vitamins and vitamin C as well, but we're talking about B vitamins right now. The issue with a lot of B vitamins are that they're so low dose that they don't do enough, right? And then the other issue is that you can take a B-complex that's too much in addition to your multivitamin. Not for everyone, because some people actually need the higher dose. They really do. And this also doesn't have to be a forever thing. Usually I have people on like an activated B-complex for maybe 3 to 4 months, and then I taper off to just one per day if needed for high levels of stress. If that's just the type of life they live is super high stress, they just use one capsule every morning. So I'll just tell you, what I did specifically, and maybe this will help you out as well, is I looked high and low for a B complex that actually had a lower amount of folate or folic acid. And the reason I did that is because most humans will get great benefit from using an all-in-one powder like the one we offer, the Daily Nutritional Support, or the Daily Activated Multi that we offer as well, or just a good functional medicine multi, right? You can use anybody's product that you think is a functional medicine-based product. That's great. So again, it has to be functional medicine based. And what I saw was this, though. Most B complex have 400 to 800 micrograms of folate or folic acid or nature folate or 5-MTHF, like all different brands of it. The problem is this, is that you really don't need that high a dosage unless you are taking a prenatal, right? So the majority of people don't need 1,000 to 1,200 micrograms of folate. So when you take most multis, they're about 400 micrograms per day, just because that's the average, that's the standard, that's a good amount to take in. You can certainly do more, that's for sure. And I do recommend it all the way up to 800 to 1,000 micrograms a day. So what I figured was this, is like, I don't want one that's 800 micrograms because the 400, that's 1,200. So again, unless you are on a prenatal, you don't need that. So what I did was I got one that's only 200 micrograms of folate. And so how I looked at it is you're taking 400 from your multi or your all-in-one shake, which is exactly what I do. And then during times of high stress, I also use my B complex, and that only has 200 micrograms. So again, I practice what I preach. I'm only getting 600 total micrograms of folate, natural folate every day. Remember, it's the methylated version that's super important. And that's really safe, and that's a great level. And again, you can do an organic acids test. It will show you all your B vitamin levels. Amazing test to do. Of course, I do that myself, and that's how I can test myself as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, I do moderate dose, not high and not low vitamins. And the reason I do the moderate dose is so that if someone's in my practice, I can always go more B12, more B6, more niacin or B3, more B1 for things like thyroid-based issues, right? So I can do all of those things, but I like to have the whole B complex, and then I can go more for each individual one if needed, but I always am taking that B complex right there. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, you can see the label, the formula, everything that I use. I'm an open book. It's right at stephencabral.com/store, and it's obviously under the supplements tab. You can see if it's the right fit for you or not. They're super inexpensive. It's like $1 or less per day. So it's not a big one out of pocket. But again, most people will simply need the daily nutritional support shake or a multi every day, which is literally $1 or $2 a day, and you get everything you need. Like literally it's an all-in-one where it's all your minerals, all your vitamins, all your protein, everything right in it. So I can't recommend it enough. It's what I do. It's the cornerstone of my program, and it's the #1 bestseller. Okay. So Sally is up next, and she's actually our last question today. So we have a nice light week. So Sally, hi, Dr. Cabral. I love your podcast and just started to listen to all the back episodes to catch up. I apologize if you already answered my question. I've been suffering from migraines for over a decade. I just recently heard you say it could be food related. How so, and how am I able to find out what I'm allergic to? What foods should I avoid if I get migraines? Thank you so much. Okay, so Sally, let's answer your question. All right, so Sally, let me give you the back episodes first. So we did a quick tip on what to do if you're suffering from a migraine right at that point. It's a fun little, never fun, obviously, when you have a migraine. I used to get many, but it's a hot cold treatment on episode 231. And then on 274, I talk a little bit more about histamines in regards to migraines. And today I want to give this a more food related topic because again, you have to understand that you are an individual and your symptoms are very similar to everyone else in the world, right? But how your symptoms come about are not always the same. And that's really what naturopathic and functional medicine is all about. We understand that everyone's suffering from the same like joint pain or migraine or digestive issues, bloating, cramping, heartburn, all those different things, right? We know those things, but the way that they manifest themselves comes about differently. For example, some people get migraines from, there's a trigeminal area behind the ear, and there's an actual biomechanical deviation, which just means structural based issue, from people sticking their head too far forward while they're driving or looking at their computer. And there's this plumb line where your ear, your shoulder, your hip, your knee, and your ankle are all supposed to be in alignment. Well, what can happen is there can be constricted blood flow because of the cervical flexion. That's sticking your head too far forward. That's basically just a fancy word for that. Well, when that happens, there's actually that constriction that can actually lead to migraines and so worse than just a regular tension-based headache. But then there's also another side of the spectrum. So again, there's many different reasons, right? I'm just giving you some examples where we're talking about food-based. And I think Sally's has the hunch that her migraines could be food-related, and a lot of people's are. So there are certainly high histamine foods, and you can check back my podcast on that. But high histamine foods are basically smoked foods or any aged foods or anything with vinegar or fermented foods. And again, like in our culture right now, fermented foods they kind of like the last couple of years have been this big wave, right? This amazing thing. Well, I know when I was studying with Dr. Natasha McBride for the GAPS protocol, we were, huge. We were told, this is a long time ago, but we were told that we should be doing lots of fermented foods. And she's brilliant. So please don't get me wrong. I mean, she's amazing. And actually, she has a huge heart. I really appreciate the work that she's doing. But you have to treat everyone as an individual. For a lot of people, I've found is they can't do any histamine foods. They can't do any fermented foods. It makes them so much worse. Like skin looks worse, headaches, migraines, all those different things. So again, we treat everyone as an individual. So let's talk about foods. So I gave you the back episodes. I want to make sure that I truly answer your question. So how could it be related to food? Well, foods are, as they say, the best thing you can do for your body or the worst thing you can do for your body. And some foods, which are considered healthy for some, are horrible for others. And that's because of this inflammation-based reaction. So whenever we have inflammation, think of it as like constriction or swelling. So that can obviously affect the brain and all the blood flow to the brain and the head and the cranial area. So when we're looking at that, we're saying, well, these foods can cause immune-based triggers, an IgE, an IgG, an IgM, right? So there's different triggers of the immune system. The Ig just stands for immunoglobulin, which is basically like white blood cells and how they attack the body. So what does that really mean? Like, why does that matter to you? Well, what it means is when we have this war going on inside the body, we have this inflammation, it can actually lead to migraine. So that's kind of like an Achilles heel for some people, right? So some people, that tension, that stress, that inflammation becomes a migraine. For other people, it becomes joint pain. For others, it becomes like hand tremors or shaking. For, let's say, others, it becomes acne. Like, we all have, again, these digestive issues. The Achilles heel of where this inflammation, where these issues come from. So sadly, the absolute best thing to do is first figure out what are your immediate triggers. Like when you eat a food, do you feel a headache or tension or hives or flushing coming on? Let's say within 20, 30 minutes of eating that food. That's an IgE reaction. Typically, you don't need a lab test for that because you're going to start to become more aware of your own body. But the IgG test, that's the one that I recommend. That's a hard one to figure out, meaning like 1, 2, or 3 days later after you eat a food, you could have a reaction to it. And by 3 days later, after it passes, that's like 9 to 12 times that you've eaten, right? So any one of those meals, any one of those ingredients could be the trigger. And that's why I just recommend the at-home blood spot card. Again, you can go to stevencabral.com/store and you'll be able to find that little IgG food sensitivity test. I can't recommend that enough. It's so simple, so easy to do. It comes with my recommendations. It comes with a 30-minute call with the health coach. It's fantastic. Again, can't recommend it enough. But of course, if it's not within your budget or you just don't feel comfortable doing that, that's okay too. There's no issues. It's just a little harder because you have to start keeping a food journal and you have to start rotating your foods more, which means that you can't eat the same food every 3 days. So right after the 3 days is up, then you can start eating that next food. I'll talk more about my rotation diet in the future. But that's how the inflammation can actually happen. That's how it can lead to a migraine. And that's one more reason why people can get them. So let me give you one more tip though, because I want to make sure that you feel, pretty satisfied in how I answered this. So besides removing a lot of those high histamine foods, you're going to want to look at something that not a lot of people are talking about, and that's high lectin-based foods. And the high lectin-based foods are the ones that are typically with grains and beans and those types of things. Again, can they be healthy for some people? Well, I don't have an issue with some grains. I really don't. Like oatmeal could be fine for some people. Rice can be fine for some people. But there's actually issues with people who have lectin-based issues. And lectins are, again, whenever it's coated of a plant-based food, essentially. And again, I'm a plant-based guy, so don't get me wrong, but some foods are higher in lectins than others. Now, if you sprout them, that can do a much better job. And if you kind of like grind them or you chew them up or you make them a little bit easier to digest, that will help as well. So start to look into that as well. It's another place to look. It's one that not a lot of people are talking about. But if you follow more of like the elimination diet that I talk about, which is reducing the grains in the beginning, I just eliminate them for 21 days, really simply, right? If you don't get a migraine within 21 days of not eating grains and really following fruits and veggies, and then you can do vegan-based proteins or you can do some animal-based proteins, sticking more towards like fish. then, well, you might have your answer, right? You haven't got a migraine since you did this. Well, now what do? It's a little easier. Then you start to introduce one new food at a time, have it multiple times in the same week. Did a migraine come on? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, well, you might be finding your trigger foods then. So, Sally, hopefully that helps give you a little bit of insight into, those details about how you're going to do that 21-day basically elimination. And I truly believe that you will absolutely figure out the triggers for your migraines, just like everyone does, who really just puts the time in. And again, it's not always straightforward, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. Take care, everyone. And thank you again for tuning into another great week of the Cabral Concept. Really enjoy these shows and really enjoy answering your questions. And make sure you come back tomorrow where we kick off our new year with another Mindset and Motivation Monday, this time talking about the secret goal setting success formula. You're not going to want to miss that. And I'm telling you, this formula will truly hold the key to why you may not have achieved your goals in the past, but you absolutely will this year. All right, talk with you soon. Take care.
I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.